Brief about me, I'm Sanaya Jhunjhunwala and I'm currently a law student at NLU Jodhpur. And I'm a first year student, so it's not been that long since I gave my CLAT paper. So I hope I'm able to actually convey what I'm trying to teach regarding current affairs. Today, we'll be dealing with the Waqf Amendment Bill, which was just passed in the Parliament a few days ago by and then given assent by the President. Before we begin, I wanted to ask, can everybody hear me? Can they just get a show of thumbs? Is there any issue with my mic or something like that? Okay, so I know that many of you guys don't want to speak up or something like that. So you guys may drop a text in the chat if you guys want to contribute to the session as such. Like if you have any additional information while I'm talking about that, please feel free to chime in, and please don't hesitate, because honestly saying, I'm also not 100% aware of everything on this topic, only what I've researched, so I might have missed a few things. So if we can start now, I'll just share the presentation. Can you guys see the presentation? Okay, so basically, the Waqf Amendment Act or the Waqf Amendment Bill. So, what is the Waqf Amendment Act? So, the Waqf Amendment Act is a act that is to amend the Waqf Bill that was passed in the 1990s, and the Waqf properties, which are basically, there are over 8.72 lakh registered Waqf properties which span over 38 lakh acres, and is one of the largest landholding systems in the country. The purpose for this act is to bring transparency, efficiency, and accountability to the administration of these assets, and to also, address the history of mismanagement they have, and encroachments upon land which is not registered under the Waqf, and as well as any legal ambiguities that have might have arisen. Before we move on to the actual bill, before we move on to the actual bill, pehle we need to know what Waqf is, because Waqf is a term बहुत लोग might not be familiar with over here. Just a quick introduction to what is Waqf. The term Waqf refers to a permanent dedication of movable or immovable property by an individual for religious, pious, charitable, or public welfare purposes under Islamic law. जब So any property which has been permanently dedicated by any individual for religious, pious, yet charitable purpose by under Islamic law is termed to be a waqf. And once a property has been declared a waqf, it cannot be sold, inherited, or transferred, so that it remains perpetually for its communal benefit. Properties are usually declared waqf so that they bring some kind of advantage and some kind of pleasure to the community it serves, which is the Islamic community over here. And the property, the management, and uh, these properties are taken care by the Mutawali or the caretaker and the state Waqf boards. So every state has a Waqf board which holds the jurisdiction for all the Waqf properties under in those states. Now, what are the some of the main characteristics? What are some of the main characteristics of Waqf? मतलब एज आई सेड बिफोर, एक बार कोई भी प्रॉपर्टी वाकफ डिक्लेयर हो जाती है, उसको लीगली कोई भी ऑल्टर या remove नहीं कर सकता है. Priya, we are doing Waqf, the recent Waqf Amendment Bill, and I'm just introducing the term Waqf to everyone. Um, so, as I was saying, the property, it cannot be legally altered or removed from its designated purpose. For example, if a building has been given to charity for housing orphans under the Waqf Act or under the Waqf laws, it cannot be used anything except for housing orphans. And yes, Waqf is a pretty important topic for CLAT 2026 because it is a kind of a controversial bill which was passed by the parliament. And I think इसका बहुत सारा रह चुका अमेंडमेंट्स बिल्स रह चुके हैं प्री कॉलोनियल एरा मुगल एरा ब्रिटिश ने भी बहुत सारे बिल्स पास किए थे इसके बारे में सो दिस इज समथिंग विच इज वेरी लाइकली टू कम फॉर क्लैट 2026 मूविंग ऑन the property remains delegated indefinitely मतलब there is no time period कि कितना लंबा वो property रहेगा जब तक that property is standing that property will be remain dedicated to working on that cause and as I said before, all the Waqf properties are used for charitable purposes. So it can be used as mosque or madrasas to teach people as orphanages and other welfare institutions such as feeding the poor or maybe home for elderly. And Waqf properties hold a special jurisdiction where normal laws which apply to properties do not apply to Waqf. And they're only governed by special Waqf tribunals, which operate under a special jurisdiction under law. That also the doctrine, once a Waqf, always a Waqf. एक बार वाकफ हो गया वो हमेशा ही वाकफ रहेगा and ensures that every wrongful or disputed Waqf declaration is protected under the law unless it has been overturned by the Waqf tribunals. I hope this is a pretty in-depth explanation of what Waqf actually is. So I hope everyone understood that. अगर नहीं है तो I can explain again. मेरे को please drop a text in the chat or just show me show me a thumbs up for if you guys have gotten it. Okay, I guess it's pretty much okay. Priya, I'll just do a very quick under uh, I'll just do a very quick recap of what is Waqf. Waqf is any permanent dedication of any kind of property. It can be movable property, it can be an immovable property. Movable property may you can take somehow a car, and immovable property may you can have land, you can have a house, you can have a mosque for any kind of charitable purposes or public welfare purpose under the so एक बार any property has been declared as a waqf. It cannot be sold, it cannot be inherited or transferred to anyone. It's not like a property which is inherited by for example, if a man has dedicated a property as waqf, his son or his heirs cannot inherit that property anymore because it now has a special jurisdiction. And there are special laws that take care of it. They do not, the normal property laws in India don't apply to these waqf boards. And don't worry, this PPT will be shared with, I think, towards the end, I'm not sure. So I can do a repeat then, towards the end of the class. Uh, so we'll deal with the tribunals in the following slides, okay, Nishta? Okay, so moving on. A quick history of Waqf. So as you guys all know, जिन्होंने history पढ़ा है, जब Delhi Sultanate invaders from Mongols and all came into Delhi with bringing with them Islam into India, uh, especially so that is when a Waqf was actually established, especially in the early part of the Delhi Sultanate, and it was used to finance mosques, madrasas, and Sufi shrines. It was pretty small during the Delhi Sultanate, and the whole Waqf as a concept was expanded more by the Mughal rulers later. So, just to give an idea as to what Waqf can be, आप लोग सबने जमा मस्जिद के बारे में सुना ही होगा. It was constructed with Waqf funding. Fatehpur Sikri in Agra, it was built under Akbar's Waqf scheme, and then Ajmer Sharif Dargah. It's one of the dargahs of one of these Sufi saints, pretty famous Sufi saint, and is one of the oldest religious Waqf properties in India. And social and religious utility, वही है कि basically the main thing was to spread the influence of Islam and it served as instruments for social welfare to fund public work, irrigation systems for farmers, and also educational programs to teach Islam to the younger generation as well as any converts. And many historical structures owe their existence to Waqf endowments. So all these Jama Masjid, Fatehpur Sikri, all of this couldn't have been made without any kind of Waqf endowment. So Waqf can also include kind. So we are talking about uh, during that time, during the Delhi Sultanate, it also included any kind of precious gems, gold, silver, which was used to build these Waqf properties. Now, moving on, मुगल पीरियड में इसका क्या है? uh, Especially emperors like Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan significantly expanded Waqf institutions. As you may have heard, Shah Jahan built a lot of monuments all across the Mughal Empire, and many of them were funded by Waqf. And they also re-endowed the existing ones. Uh, so, as I said, major mosques, madrasas, and Sufi shrines, only still existent, were built by Waqf orders. And basically the main service of Waqf was to promote social welfare, promote Islamic education, promote Islam as a religion, and it was often a safety net for various marginalized communities, especially uh, poor laborers or farmers who were not able to afford their own education or supporting their own family. So now during the colonial era, uh, so there were three main Waqf acts which the British passed during the colonial era, which to codify the Waqf system basically. The first act was the Musliman Waqf Validating Act. Musliman is Muslim, Waqf Validating Act. It's to recognize family Waqfs. So Waqfs dedicated to families. And then there was another Musliman Waqf Act in 1923. It introduced financial transparency and basically made the Waqf properties and the boards accountable. Ki whatever money they are being given or whatever money they are spending, they have to show accounts for that. And the last act, which is the Musliman Waqf Validating Act 1930, it basically strengthened the legal backing for Waqfs, giving Waqfs legal rights, giving Waqf the separate jurisdiction basically. And what the challenges that Waqf properties and the whole Waqf systems faced during colonization was there was a lack of unified approach. Properties were claimed without proper documentation. There was a lot of forgery of properties, and conflicts arose between local Waqf management and colonial authorities. So, for many Waqf properties, there were local management who took care of it and who administrated it. But colonial authorities came in and they tried to claim them and tried to build their own Waqf boards, which led to a clash between them. And I said dual authority ka issues are both colonial state and local religious leaders tried to claim jurisdiction of the Waqf properties, which led to overlapping in administrative practices, even sometimes legal issues. So this is where your main content actually starts. Before this slide, this is just to introduce you to what Waqf is, what are its features and everything. This slide is pretty important because this is a summary of all the previous Waqf acts. While this session is mostly for the Waqf Amendment Bill 2025, this you guys should actually read up upon the other Waqf acts if you guys can. So after independence, the first Waqf bill that was passed was in 1954, and it laid down the foundation for creating state Waqf boards for oversight and management of Waqf properties. As you see, ki Corona era mein, there was so much issue with management of Waqf properties. So what the Waqf Act 1954 did was create state-wise boards, create statewide boards for uh, management of these Waqf properties. So there was no jurisdictional issues. And there were subsequent amendments to the Waqf Act Amendment 59, 64, 69, and 84, basically addressing all the issues that had been there since historically, risky discrepancies, mismanagement, and encroachments. Basically, many times Yeah, yeah, no issues. As I said before, you guys can speak up, you guys can drop it in the chat. That's not an issue at all. If you're not able to understand anything, please drop a text, okay? Uh, as I was saying, then there was the Waqf Act in 1995. It replaced the Waqf Act of 1954 and introduced uniformity in management, which established Waqf tribunals. Waqf tribunals were basically courts, I would say, which took care of any kind of legal issue that arise with Waqf properties. As Nishtad asked, what are the Waqf tribunals? They composed of specialized person whose jurisdiction was over Waqf properties, basically. Uh, any dispute that arose due to Waqf was taken care of by the Waqf tribunal, and there was a 2013 amendment to the Waqf Act. Basic two main amendments made to the Waqf Act 1995 was that mandated quotas for women were added in the management boards, basically the boards which took care of the upkeep of Waqf properties. As you can see, there was a major disparity with women being included in taking care of Waqf properties, especially um, uh, being a very male dominated area. So this Waqf amendment from 2013 tried to bring a more of a uniformity in more women being allowed to mandatorily be part of these management boards. Also, Uh, it also urged the Waqf boards or made the Waqf boards maintain better records and more transparency in their dealings. What money was spent, how the money was spent, where the money came it from, where the money came from. I'm so sorry. Okay, is there any doubt in this slide? Because this is a pretty important slide. If you guys want, I can explain some things again. Uh, no doubts. Everyone understood everything. Okay. Okay, so you can also ask these doubts later as well. Just speak up or you can drop a chat. Now, work of boards. Very important questions आ सकते हैं इसके composition के बारे में which we learn later. तो first of all, as पहले पढ़े थे, वाकफ एक्ट 1954 ने स्टेट वाकफ बोर्ड एस्टैब्लिश किया and basic responsibility of these boards was to register any work of property that was there in their state, maintain statutory records, and ensure adherence to the donor's intent. मीनिंग कि अगर कोई वाकफ प्रॉपर्टी जिस इंटेंट से वाकफ को डोनेट की गई है, समझो बी इट फॉर अ मॉस्क, बी इट फॉर अ मदरसा, बी इट फॉर अ ऑर्फनेज, वो डोनर की इच्छा फॉलो हो. And then there was a Central Waqf Council, which was established in 1964. It was basically a advisory body. It did not have a jurisdiction per se. It was to standardize practice, provide policy guidelines, and address issues that cross state lines. So while state Waqf boards took care of any issues within their own state, there were sometimes issues that arose that cross state lines, and that is where the Central Waqf Council stepped in. The What are the primary responsibilities of the Waqf board? Property registration and record maintenance, proper record maintenance so that there is transparency in the whole process, oversight and management of the properties, any kind of dispute resolution. Uh, there were disputes that arose, so that Waqf tribunals were set up, which and so basically anyone who sat on a tribunal uh, had a lot of specialized knowledge about Islamic law and jurisprudence. uh, Islamic law is a whole other different topic, which I think I will take up in the future, where it is kind of different from normal laws, and specialized knowledge, in-depth knowledge of it is required to actually give any kind of judgment. And as I said, ensuring transparency. This was the Waqf board's function, and uh, so why was so much power given to the Waqf boards? If you look at it this way, this is a pretty special exemption made for any kind of property, and they were allotted a lot of power. Why was this so? So first of all, to safeguard the perpetuity of the property, it should be maintained as to what its original intent was. The doctrine that once a waqf, always a waqf, necessitates very strict control to ensure that properties remain dedicated to their original purposes, and also to protect against encroachment, illegal encroachment. कोई और आके property ले ना ले due to illegal paperwork. And historically, there has been a pattern which has been observed that Waqf properties are very prone and very prone to being encroached by illegal ways, arbitrary declarations, or dilution of their purpose. And concentrating power in a special board provided a kind of a barrier against these practices and made the whole process fair. And there was a ensured consistency in the management of these properties. And since Waqf management required a lot of nuanced understanding, a very fine understanding of Islamic law, the best practices, and keeping the community welfare of Islamic people in mind, dedicated boards with special knowledge were better suited to handle these complexities. Meaning, even the people on the board themselves had a lot of experience and knowledge about Islamic law, how taking care of these Waqf properties, and that's why it is better to have a specialized board to take care of these Waqf properties. Uh, yeah, Swatishri, are the Islamic laws codified? So, I think they are. I'm not exactly sure. I'll just get back to you in a minute. Uh, in India, we mostly follow the Sharia laws. Uh, there are different kinds of laws. So basically, the main source of law for Islam is the Quran. Okay, and the Sunnah, and then there are other books and other codified legal documents beneath that. So there are certain acts and Sharia laws in India which have been passed by the parliament in an effort to codify these Islamic laws. But overall, I think many of these laws are still uncodified because so yeah, adding to that, what India allows, what the Indian basically laws allowed are all these Muslim matters which arise under the Islamic laws to be governed by already pre-existing Islamic laws from the Quran or the Sunnah, and they are only passed laws on some basic acts. Some so that triple talaq thing that happened a few years ago. There are some of the few instances where the uh, government itself took, especially judiciary, took action to give their opinion on any kind of Islamic law. Okay, so moving on, uh, we have why were powers not given elsewhere? First of all, specialized knowledge was required, especially Sharia laws, which is what the majority Islamic population follows in India, to preserve the religious autonomy. Waqf properties have always been self-governed by Muslim community members and structures, and therefore the exclusive management of Waqf boards ensures that there is a community autonomy of these Waqf properties. And what do you say? It is to also prevent external interference that would dilute the religious and the charitable intention of Waqf donations. Basically, to make sure that the uh, original intent of the Waqf as a structure, as a institution, remains pure and dedicated to the community it serves. And exclusivity over other authorities, as a specialized expertise requirement is required. It requires a lot of familiarity with the Islamic laws. There have been lots of legal precedents and historical practices. Uh, Many courts and governments, especially in many Muslim majority countries, have recognized that once Waqf properties have been established, they should remain insulated from arbitrary decisions of secular authorities. So maybe if any board or any kind of authority outside of a Waqf board, if they're deliberating on a Waqf matter, they might are not able to give the best decision about it, and the decision might be arbitrary and might harm the Waqf instead of helping it. This makes a very strong case for vesting their exclusive authority in Waqf boards. Also, another reason for dispersing this power uh, across various bodies could lead to very jurisdictional conflicts and further mismanagement, because the interpretation of the Islamic law also varies within the community itself. So, if different independent authorities were given power over these laws, every independent community will have a different judgment and a different opinion, which would create a lot of conflict, especially in a country like India, where around, I think, 15% of the population follows Islam. So to not undermine the sanctity of these Waqf properties, because to the Islamic community, these properties are very sacred, like how temples are sacred to Hindus. In same way, these Waqf properties, which house many of their religious establishments and uh, all these madrasas, it's very sacred to the Islamic culture as a whole. Now, moving on, uh, so these are some of the major properties claimed by Waqfs. These are examples basically. Mosques, dargahs, madrasas, and mambras are declared Waqf. These properties are basically for worship, education, and community gatherings. Several historical monuments, including part of heritage sites like Humayun's tomb, and even some areas in regions like Luton's Delhi, have been declared Waqf. The rationale behind is that edifices are part of a long-standing tradition serving both religious and public welfare purposes. Basically, as I explained before, uh, many properties that had not been declared Waqf have been declared Waqf in later years after the construction because of their significance to the Islamic community. So there are okay, Waqf properties have also had a lot of controversy also. There have been controversies when very large tracts of land or seemingly public property have been uh, thought of to be Waqf, leading to dispute over who owns these properties and what is their rightful usage. Also, uh, with modernization, many of these areas where the Waqf properties have located, especially in the Delhi and the UP region, many lucrative commercial properties come under Waqf property, and these properties, if sold, can make a lot of money. Therefore, a lot of legal battles arise over who actually owns these properties. Uh, and basically, the claims on these properties are not really administrative, they carry very deep cultural meaning, and they have a lot of history and significance to the Indian culture. And it represents centuries and years of practices that are sacred to the Islamic society and remain central, like they are the central identity of these communities. Okay, so just an example, these are some of the most famous Waqf properties in India. As I said, Ajmer Sharif Dagra in Rajasthan, Haji Al Dagra in Mumbai, Badai Mambra in Lucknow, Jama Masjid in Delhi, and Tipu Sultan Sabar Palace in Bangalore. All of these are historic sites that are claimed under the Waqf law. And as you can see, it's not concentrated in one region. It is spread across like majority area of India. So it's a very widespread, मतलब बहुत बड़ा इंस्टीट्यूशन है वाकफ. अब if you guys were not aware कि कितना बड़ा actually वाकफ है, this is the top 5 states with the most वाकफ properties, and this is according to official records. The last it was counted, it might have increased since then, and this just shows the number of properties and the number of people this whole वाकफ bill is affecting. मतलब उत्तर प्रदेश में 2.32 लाख प्रॉपर्टीज, ताजमहल प्रीसेंट्स, देन वेस्ट बंगाल में ऑलमोस्ट 80,000 प्रॉपर्टीज है, पंजाब में 75,000 प्रॉपर्टीज, तमिलनाडु में ऑलमोस्ट 66,000 प्रॉपर्टीज, कर्नाटका में almost 63,000 properties. So you're seeing the significance of Waqf as a concept कि there are lakhs and lakhs of properties all over India which fall under this jurisdiction. Uh, Moving on, these are the legal protections that Waqf are given. Okay, so many challenges are given to the validity of a Waqf claim, but why is it very hard to challenge legally the claim of a Waqf? As I said, that doctrine of once a Waqf, always a Waqf, established with various judicial precedents. There have been lots of cases, okay, and it becomes insulated from ordinary property disputes. मतलब एक बार समझो अगर 1.5 acre plot of land also is declared to be a Waqf property, normal property laws, property disputes पे apply करता ही नहीं है. Let me give you an example. There is a person A who owns around half an acre of agricultural farm, agricultural land, and he donates it. मतलब वो वाकफ को दे देता है वो land. He is the sole owner of that land. There is no one else who has any share in that property. So he gives that land as a donation to Waqf. But then his children contest the decision that कि वो land उन लोग का है by rightful inheritance. But the doctrine कि once a Waqf, always a Waqf will apply to it. Even upon the death of the person who gave that land to Waqf, it will not stop being a Waqf. And it is legally binding. This doctrine is legally binding all across India. And as I said, judicial references to specialized tribunals, even if a person or a community and organization approaches any courts in India, Supreme Court or High Court or regarding any kind of work of property, most of these cases will always be first rooted through a tribunal, work of tribunal, where people sitting on the tribunal have specialized knowledge about these laws. And uh, st- uh, statutory barriers, मतलब the laws itself, the work of acts itself, the process of declaring a work of board property. So it's not a work of board property; it's a work of property. Work of board oversees these properties basically, and to how as to they declared a property to be a work of. Wait. Well, basically, person should have complete ownership of that property. Uh, and the person who is donating that property should be of sound mind and should be a majority person, and they should be competent to give consent to a contract. And when they are making the donation, they should declare very clearly that they're trying to make a donation to the Waqf, and this can either be done orally in front of witnesses, or they can use a written document like a deed of instrument where they state clearly that this property owned by me, I'm donating it to as a Waqf, and their signature is there. And while the Waqf itself must, like for example, a man wants to give a Waqf, they must, while donating that Waqf, give it to a beneficiary such as a mosque or a specific individual or institution established in the Islamic community. And these are the basic uh, like ways of declaring a Waqf. Obviously, there are more details, but this is like the overall structure. And also, as I said, general civil codes, basic district codes, which देखो most property disputes district court हैंडल करता है. It's very rare कि ये property dispute high court या supreme court तक जाता है. तो ये जो general civil courts है, they are not allowed to interfere in matters regarding waqf matters. Directly interfere नहीं कर सकते हैं. They can suggest that case to a tribunal जो state में established है. And there's a very strong judicial uh, precedent established. There have been cases which specifically state how a Waqf property has to be decided, how a dispute with the Waqf property has to be decided, And any case against the Waqf that comes up, it बहुत rigorous procedure है. It must go through a lot of checks and balances before it is admitted in a actual tribunal. So now coming to the actual bill. Sorry, मैंने इतना time लिया actually explaining that Waqf का history, but you should be aware of what Waqf is. So very brief on it. The Waqf Amendment Bill 2025. It is now the Waqf Act basically because it was signed over on 5th April. It was introduced by the current Ministry of Monetary Affairs, Kiran Rijiju, in the Lok Sabha on August 8, 2024. After very extensive discussion, it was referred to a joint parliamentary committee for review. A joint parliamentary committee is basically a committee comprising of persons from both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha to discuss a particular matter. And the bill was passed in the Lok Sabha on April 3rd, 2025, with 288 votes in favor and 232 votes against. And then it moved on to the Rajya Sabha, where it was passed on April 4th, with 128 votes in favor and 95 against. And Draupadi Murmu gave the presidential assent to the bill on 5th April, making it officially law. And this is one of the rare cases where such a bill has been passed so quickly, because sometimes it can take years and years for a bill to pass. That means that this is a very serious consideration of a bill given, and it is a very important bill to the current administration. Remember these dates? किसने इंट्रोड्यूस किया बिल को, कब पास हुआ, लाइक लोकसभा में कितने वोट्स मिले, राज्यसभा में कितने वोट्स मिले. These are questions that can come in clat, okay? Factual questions. So these are key provisions of the uh, basically the key provisions of the uh, bill. First is key mandatory digital registration. There should be a centralized digital portal for up-to-date accessible Waqf property records. Basically, a digital portal for Waqf records, and there should be modernized survey and mapping procedures, incorporating of GIS technology for accurate property, like property marking, proper land marking, land survey and boundary marking होनी चाहिए, and stricter revised qualification and declaration procedure, stricter eligibility criteria. Uh, for Waqf donations, अब eligibility criteria has become stricter. Waqf by user doctrine revisited, while existing Waqf properties remain protected. But जब इसके बाद कोई भी Waqf property declare होगा, उसका scrutiny will be much more. Governance and membership reforms, broadening the base. So this is a very controversial amendment to the previous Waqf Act from 1994, because this was a point which is criticized a lot, that non how can non-Muslims be included in the board. But uh, this bill has been passed, and there is a new composition of Waqf boards has changed, where non-Muslim members can be included in the Waqf boards, and there is a significant rise in the quota for women. पहले तो था ही, the previous amendments did that, but now we have even a bigger quota for women. Now, also decoupling religious criteria rationalizes or removes requirements for board officials of to be of specific religion, prioritizing administrative competence. Basically, they're giving more importance to the actual experience of a person than the religion they belong to, how much administrative experience they have. Okay, so now this is again a very important amendment made. Appeal mechanisms. You know how any case appeal, like any court decision, can be appealed to a higher court. So, for example, if you're not happy with the decision made in this civil court or district court, you can appeal the decision in the high court. And अगर high court का decision भी समझ में नहीं आता, you can appeal the decision in the Supreme Court. So the new mechanism, the new amendment states that the tribunal decisions, the Waqf tribunal decisions, are now subject to time-bound higher court reviews. So within a specific period of time, that decision, which is given by the Waqf tribunal, can be contested in a higher court. Basically, a high court or a supreme court. Also regular audits, financial disclosures, and public access to worker registers promotes transparency and early detection of malfeasance. Basically, way more transparency for proper financial records and जो वाकफ register है where all the registered वाकफ properties are stated, they should have public access. These are some of the importance and impact. First is restoration of legal balance. Title disputes वो clear कर देता है where who actually owns the land or is it a walk of land. Uh, it empowers minority communities and political debate and parliamentary drama. While proponents praise the reforms, progressive critics are like, it's a potential region of Waqf autonomy and is showing an excessive state interference. This is the basic, very, very basic idea of what the opposition thinks of the Waqf Act and what does the current government think of the Waqf Act. Um, Basically, the clear jurisdiction. Basically, this act clears the jurisdiction of courts and tribunals to make sure that these disputes are done in a faster manner. Also, the legal reclassification of disputed properties and safeguarding of donor intent could redefine a lot of numerous landmark cases, which could broaden the whole property law jurisprudence regarding Waqf. Basically, there are new amendments and new sections which can lead to changes in previous landmark judgments, which can affect future decisions as well. Am I with you guys right now? I hope I'm not boring you. Quick questions, please ask. Do you guys want a small break or should I continue? बस 3-4 slides और ही बाकी है. Okay, I'll continue then. Okay, so social implications वही community empower होता है and gender inclusivity और आ रही है as mandated representation of women and experts from various religious backgrounds are being added. Uh, so now coming to the political and economic implications. So political implications क्या हो सकता है? This act is either it has the Muslim community divided. Mostly are in support of the act, but many voters are now uh, opposed to this act. So, with the passing of this amendment bill, it can affect voter dynamics, especially in state elections, and future elections might be influenced by the passing of this bill. Basically, the whole argument is that there is too much state interference in the religious matters, which is a time old debate and has been going on since before independence. First it was the Britishers, first it was the Mughals interfering in Hindu matters, then it was the Britishers interfering in the uh, Indian religion matters, and then now it's the government. Now the debate is whether the government is too involved in the current state matters. Now this is a completely truthful affair. ये मेरा political opinion नहीं है. This is just what everyone believes and what is the current status of what are people thinking. Also, economic rejuvenation, proper management and potential. So basically, इसके पहले इस act के पहले many of the Waqf assets were not being utilized properly. मतलब underutilized हो रहे थे. So this is an opportunity to increase their economic value, and they can channel these resources, new resources, into community welfare and development projects. Basically, repairing or renovation of existing Waqf properties due to disrepair, and opening of new Waqf properties and madrasas and hospitals and orphanages. Basically, giving back to the community. Okay, so this is a basic overview of how the parliament reaction to the whole bill was. Like, there were marathon sittings. This is very rare. 12 to 13-hour sittings of parliament, which is a questionable thing because sometimes these parliament don't even last for 2-3 hours because the speaker has to end the session due to so much dispute and so much improper debate. and there was a lot of passionate. I will suggest कि you go and watch ये सारे politicians का speeches online. There are a lot of speeches and ये जो with the given the parliament regarding this bill available on YouTube, especially Amit Shah's speech. Like you'll be very nice speeches. It will help you understand this whole thing better. Voting patterns and divisions, very close voting, 282 versus 232. कि PM Modi का remark था कि it is a watershed moment which is merging tradition with progressive governments, and वही कि supporters का argument था कि it is bringing very long overdue transparency and accountability and curtailing historic mismanagement, while critics का ये caution है कि centralizing power in a statutory board, दिस एक्ट माइट अंडरमाइन दी ऑर्गेनिक कम्युनिटी कंट्रोल, मतलब जो लोकल कम्युनिटी जो वाकफ को कंट्रोल करते हैं, वाकफ को मैनेज करते हैं, ये स्टैट्यूटरी बोर्ड का एस्टेब्लिशमेंट will can cause issues with centuries old practices. So these are some of the political leaders' opinions. The person who introduced the act, Kiran Rijiju, who is the Union Minister of Minority Affairs, stated that the bill is to ensure the representation of Muslim women and non-Muslims, a major part of the bill. Asauddin Owaisi, AMIM president, which is either a political party or an alliance in the parliament, it criticized the bill, stating that it is discriminatory, arbitrary, and against the Constitution of India, violations of Article 14, 15, and 21, 25 basically. Uh, Others stated that it's against the constitution, against federalism, religious minority against them. And this is interesting because according to the supporters, this is increasing the religious minorities' hak in that bill, while the critics are arguing that it is discriminating against religious minorities. So think of that as well. K.C. Venugopalan, a Congress MP, labeled it as a very draconian law, and very very strict law, rigid law, and it's a fundamental attack on the constitution. And there have been urged that there should be a committee, another committee to look at the problems again. Okay, so Akhilesh Yadav, which is a Samajwadi Party MP, questioned the inclusion of non-Muslims in the Waqf board, suggesting it's a political motive. ये बिल जो इंट्रोड्यूस हो रहा है वो बहुत सोची समझी राजनीति के तहत हो रहा है. Basically they think it's a tactic on the by the government to gain more votes. As I said, this is what has been stated. Might be true, might not be true. uh, अमित शाह जो यूनियन, now Amit Shah ka speeches, especially regarding this whole amendment bill, please go listen to them on YouTube. Very nice. News channels पे है, YouTube shorts है. Uh, as I said, the rights of the speaker do not belong to the opposition but the whole house. So they're basically stating that not only your opinions matter, but pura house ka opinion matters. And then basically one another Janata Dal U leader Rajiv Ranjan Singh basically uh, compared it to the Indira Gandhi under the whole Golden Temple attack and the killing of the thousands of Sikhs during that militants during that time. Operation Blue Star, I think. I'm not sure of that. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Basically, highlighting past incidents and stating that this can become very religiously volatile and can cause issues with the moving on. So this is particular amendments to the old bill. Basically, major amendments क्या है? This is it. Appeal to high courts. Basically, मैंने जो बोला है कि Waqf tribunal decisions can be appealed to higher courts under a time period. Old law stated था कि Waqf tribunal decisions are final. Appeals allowed नहीं है. But new amendment है कि within 90 days tribunal का decision can be appealed to the high court. मतलब अगर राजस्थान में किसी ट्रिब्यूनल ने कोई डिसीजन दिया है तो ऑपोजिट पार्टी वो डिसीजन को लेके हाई कोर्ट में जा सकती है अपील कराने के लिए विद इन 90 डेज. उसके बाद इट्स नॉट अलाउड. इम्पैक्ट इसकी दिस enhances judicial oversight. More authorities have power over Waqf properties. And composition of the Waqf Tribunal. According to the old composition, it had one judicial member, which is a district judge level, one state government officer, and one expert in the Muslim law. अब न्यू composition है, there should be district judge serving a retired member of a joint secretary rank officer, basically someone from the administration, and member a revenue administrative officer. uh, इसमें ये है कि चेंज ये है कि दे हैव रिमूव्ड मैंडेटरी मुस्लिम लॉ एक्सपर्ट. मतलब मुस्लिम लॉ एक्सपर्ट हो सकता है, बट इट्स नॉट मैंडेटरी एनीमोर, विच इज मैंडेटरी on which is mandatory before. Next is central government powers. पुराना एक्ट 1994 वाला लिमिटेड द रूल मेकिंग पावर्स द सेंटर, बट अमेंडमेंट के हिसाब से it expands the power. Center can issue directions to state governments and Waqf boards. Removal of Waqf board members. New clause के हिसाब से government can remove members for misconduct, incapacity or abuse of position. उसके पहले due process and detailed inquiry was required. There can be political misuse as well. So this is a very contentious amendment. Encroachment and property disputes, section 52A and 54. Amendment ये हुआ है कि it strengthens the Waqf board's power to reclaim encroached properties and streamlines actions against illegal occupants, basically making disputes faster. इसका ये है कि minority communities misuse हो सकता है and evict minority communities without fair trial, तो safeguards are needed. Jurisdiction of civil courts. Existing bar की civil courts are barred, but change है कि appeal to high courts are permitted. So partial restoration of judicial access. जब सारे civil courts barred नहीं है, high courts within 90 days of the tribunal का decision. Modernization and digitization of the Waqf governance. So this is the last slide. Basically, जो मैंने starting में बोला था कि how the 2025 amendment wants to digitize the whole Waqf registry, wants to have a central database for all the Waqf properties. There should be proper satellite mapping of the properties. Online registration access होना चाहिए. Public should have access to the Waqf records through online portals. And there should be real-time grievance redressal mechanisms where public can submit their grievances online and it will be taken care of in some ways. So that was the end. और कुछ है नहीं. अगर ये पीपीटी शेयर होता आप लोग के साथ, there is this video I've embedded. It's almost 40 minutes, but अगर टाइम मिल जाए तो प्लीज थोड़ा बहुत सुन लेना. अमित शाह का स्पीच है, वाकफ बिल का स्पीच है. If not, look at YouTube shorts. Very interesting. So that was the end. I hope समझ में आया हो. And I'm sorry कि I went a bit fast, but there was a lot of content to cover. And I hope, are there any questions? Any particular